So we're still in section 2.1, but we're going to finish that up. So the formula for the slope, we talked about rise over run, and we talked about the change in y over the change in x. So today we're going to use formula where we just looked at it and counted how many were in between. And here's the actual formula for it. Then we've got 3, and I don't give you any formulas on any tests, so you do need to know these for the final and for test 3. So the point slope form is this. And the first one is what I'm going to use to do calculations. So if we're asked to find an equation of a line, then you would say, okay, the question says find the equation of a line. I'm going to write this down right away. And what you need to fill in is a slope, the m, and a point. So the slope and a point. And they just put subscripts there to indicate that you're going to replace those with numbers. And the no subscript in the formula itself means we're going to leave those as x and y, so that when you end up with a formula, you have an x and a y in it. Okay, so these are all going to be replaced. The slope y-intercept form, some of you in high school would have jumped to this one to calculate. So you'd be given a slope, and then you would plug in a point into this and solve for the y-intercept. You can still do that. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you just forget about that and you do it my way. But if you were taught to use this formula every time, then you can just do that, okay? I'm not going to do it that way, but if you like it, you can go back and do that. It's fine. The problem I have with that is really not much, except when you get to calculus and you're asked to find equation of a tangent line and other lines, you're going to have to jump back up to this one, or it's going to end up being really complicated. So it's the method that I'm going to do, and always using this one, works for other courses. Okay? And then standard form is sort of what we did last class. I put the questions always in standard form, but we don't really use it for anything except to leave our answer in standard form. Okay? So standard form is, the examples we did last class, x plus y equals 4, that's in standard form. X and y both on one side, maybe with a coefficient other than 1. It could have something in front of them, and then the constant, just the number on the other side. So this is standard form. Now, if we wanted to rearrange this and put it in slope y-intercept form, we would move the x over, and this is slope y-intercept form. So this has a y equals, and then your x term is first, and your constant is next. This slope y-intercept form is more useful to read information from the actual equation, because we can look at the number in front of the x is the slope, so that would be -1, and the constant that's by itself over here is the y-intercept, the 0.04. So it's a little more useful to look at this one in this form and get information from it. But a lot of times our equations are given in standard form. Okay. And in linear algebra, if you're taking that now or will be taking that, you see more standard form than this form, but they are interchangeable. Okay. So we're going to do some examples that say find the equation of the line Okay, so we're going to do a few different questions, worded different ways and given different pieces of information. But our end goal is the same. We want an equation of a line. So here I didn't say what form that I want you to leave your answer in, so it's up to you. But I could say put your answer in slope y-intercept form or in standard form. So we'll write the answer both ways so you can see what you would need to do. But if it doesn't ask, you don't need both ways, right? Whatever you end up with is fine. Okay, so you see the keywords, find the equation of the line, and you write down your formula. This one gave a point and a slope, so we just filled them in. So the point, this is x1, y1 with those subscripts. I said that's where you put a number in. And the slope is 2, so m is 2. And the x value is -1, so minus a -1, plus 1. Now, what we don't do is leave it in this form. Okay, so this is more of like a working form, how you start it and then you work it out. So we would multiply the 2. So 2x, and 2 times 1 is 2. And then if you wanted it in y-intercept form, you'd move the 3 over. So this would be slope y-intercept form. So that's what you do for slope y-intercept form. From this point, what if we wanted standard form? What would we do? So we actually want the, so move the x over. Usually in standard form you would want the x, the coefficient in front of the x to be positive. So how would we rearrange it? So I'm looking at this one. I'll just write it over here, because this is the point where we have in our formula, and it says, okay, write it in standard form. So what we would actually do is move the y, so 2x minus y, and we'd want the 2 minus 3 minus 2. And flip the whole thing over. Okay, so usually in standard form we're going to want a positive in front of the x. Will you get it marked wrong if you have a negative in front of the x? No. No. But it's more standard, okay? It's, the regular way is to rearrange it so x is positive. So this would be standard form, and this would be slope y-intercept form. It didn't ask in this question for either form, so you could leave it either way, and you would, but really on a test I usually say what I want you to do. Okay, B. Same question, find the equation of the line. And this time, let's say through the points (1, 5) and 4, 2. So this would be case 2. So case 1, you're given a point and a slope. Case 2 would be that you're given 2 points. So again, to find an equation of line, we would first write down our formula for an equation. And here we need a point and a slope to fill it in. But we're given 2 points. So our first step is to find the slope. So we need to find the slope. You could do it like we did last class, which is to draw the 2 points and count how far up and to the right or left you go, but we're just going to use formula now. By the way, these are the same formula, rearranged. Does anyone see that? Take a look at it. This and this. What? You should cross multiply, right? If we cross multiply here, x2 minus x1 times m, we've got this one without the subscripts 2 on them. Okay, but it's actually the same formula. All right, so which points are the first and which points are the second? It doesn't matter. You can label them whichever way you want. So if we said that 1, 5 is 0.1, so this would be like x1, y1. And then 4, 2 is the point x2, y2. Or you could do it the other way around. And you'd get the same answer, exactly. Okay, someone can try it the other way. You would get the same thing. So if we called this one y2, just because it was the second point I wrote, maybe, so then you would say y2 minus y1, so 2 minus 5. And then x2 is 4, and x1 is 1, so 4 minus 1. So we end up with a slope of -1 and 2 points, which we only need 1. Which point would we have to use in our equation? It doesn't matter. So we could use this slope with 1, 5, or we could, don't do both, although it would be a check, I guess, because you'll end up with the same thing. I just want to show you once that you end up with the same thing, it doesn't matter which point, and then we will not do that again. Okay? So here, y minus y1 is equal to m onto x minus x1. We're going to do the same thing twice, but with the opposite point. So y minus the y value, x minus the x, and I put the slope in, -1. Multiply that -1 through, so negative x minus 1 times -1 plus 1. And let's move the 5 over and put it in slope y-intercept form. So this actually gives us more information. Like I said, you can look at this form and say, okay, the slope is -1, so whatever's in front of the x, the coefficient of the x, and the 6, what is that? It's actually a third point on the graph. I gave you 2 points that work, and this would be a third, the y-intercept, third point on the graph. Do you need to plot 3 points? No, but if you were asked to graph this, the 6 is really important. So remember when I said when I mark it, what do I look that make sure that you've done? Pass through the x, y axis in the right place. So the 6 is actually more important than the points that were given, because that's what we look for. Now this, if we did the same thing but we used the other point, x minus 4 is the x value. So minus x, minus 1 times minus 4, plus 4, move the 2 over. Same thing. So it would be a good check. It's not actually very hard to plug it in. If your slope is a fraction, then you see a little bit more mistakes, and maybe you're less likely to do it twice to see if it works. But you don't need to do this one to check it. You can write this one and plug the other point in and see if it works, because remember, this is an equation where all the points we're talking about work, right? They're all the dots that make up the line. So you could actually get this equation and then try plugging 4, 2 in and making sure it works. That would be another check. Okay, C. Same question, find the equation of the line. Through the points. Okay, so you've got part B written down. I want you to try this one. It's the same thing. I gave you 2 points. So you first need to find the slope, and then you plug it in. So try this one. There's the method. Find the slope, and then the slope and either of the 2 points, it doesn't matter which one, and you plug it in. What happened? Slope is it 0 on top or 0 on bottom? What? Top or bottom? That sounded like different answers. on the top, 0 on top. Is 0 on top okay? Yes. So the answer is 0, so plug 0 in. What does 0 mean? Remember our drawing? Horizontal line. Okay, so M, oops. So it doesn't matter which point. If we started with this one as our y2, so we would have 1 minus 1, 4 minus a minus 3, 0 over 7. 0 on top is okay, that's equal to 0, and 0 is a number, so that's okay. It means it's a horizontal line, and when you go to fill it in, you don't actually need to do this, because if you recognize that that's a horizontal line, the equation will be y equals a number. We talked about that, right? So you could say y equals what? You don't even need to remember it's y. Look at the 2 points and see which one's the same. See, the 1 is the same, so y equals 1 is the equation. The x value changes, but the y doesn't, so we say y equals 1, x can be anything. If you fill it in, 0 times anything is 0, so that's 0. So we have y minus 1 equals 0, which is y equals 1. Don't call it remember what I said, don't call it? A straight line. All of the lines are straight, right? It's a horizontal line. They're all straight. This is straight, but so is the other lines are straight when you draw them, right? So don't get that mixed up. So horizontal line. Okay, so what would a vertical line look like if I gave you 2 points? The x values would be the same. So here it is, to be complete. So when we fill this one in, so the y values, 1 minus 0, 2 minus 2. That one's not okay, so what do we say the slope is? Undefined, not infinity, but undefined or no slope. 1 over 0 is undefined. Doesn't have an answer. And so how would we fill it in? If it's not a number, you wouldn't. So that's when you actually have to remember. I can make it work and show you that, but we're not going to. You're going to say, okay, it was undefined. It's a vertical line. Look back at my points and say, okay, x is 2, so that's the equation. X equals 2. This is a vertical line.